Throwaway because my sister uses Reddit, and if she sees this, I'll actually evaporate from shame. So a few months ago, my girlfriend Lena started getting really into baking. Like, aggressively into baking. Every surface in our apartment was dusted with flour. There were cooling racks where normal people keep keys. At one point, I found a whisk in the shower. Anyway, one Friday, she tells me she's entering some local baking competition and asks me not to touch the cake in the fridge because it's structurally delicate. Those were her exact words. Structurally delicate. Like she was storing uranium instead of a carrot cake. Now here's where I messed up. At around 2 a.m. I got hungry. Not regular hungry either. The kind of hunger where your body feels like it's being remotely controlled by raccoons. I went to the fridge and saw the cake sitting there under foil. I told myself I'd just take one tiny bite from the back. You already know where this is going. The frosting was incredible. I genuinely lost consciousness for a second. When I came to, half the cake was gone, and I was standing in the kitchen holding a fistful of sponge like a Victorian orphan. So I panicked. I tried to rebuild the missing side using other food in the fridge. Cream cheese. Tortillas. At one point I used mashed potatoes as mortar. It looked less like a cake and more like a section of war-torn infrastructure. The next morning, Lena opens the fridge. Silence. Not normal silence either. The kind where the air pressure changes. She slowly turns to me and says, "Why is it warm?" And look, I know cakes can be warm. Cakes are literally baked. But she said it like the cake had been found breathing. I started apologizing immediately. Just rapid-fire confessions. I said I was sorry. I said I'd buy another cake. I said I didn't know frosting could psychologically dominate a person like that. She just stared at me. Then she said, I said yes. Then she said, "You let it see the apartment." At this point, I honestly thought she was joking. I even laughed a little. Huge mistake. Her expression didn't change. She whispered, "It knows the layout now." There are moments in life where your brain attempts to hand control to a more qualified adult, but there isn't one available. I asked what she meant. Lena walked over to the fridge and very carefully peeled back the foil. The cake was gone. Not gone as in eaten, gone as in absent. The plate was still there. The frosting smear I'd left with my thumb was still there. But the actual cake no longer occupied a stable location in physical space. There was depth behind the plate. Not metaphorical depth. Literal depth. Like the fridge interior continued backward for miles. Cold wind blew out carrying the smell of cinnamon and rainwater and something electrical. I remember saying, very calmly, "What the fuck?" And from somewhere inside the fridge something moved. Not toward us. Across. Like a train passing in another room. Lena shut the fridge instantly. Then she looked at me with genuine fear and said, "You took too much." At this point I should explain something about our apartment. It had started changing a few weeks earlier. Nothing obvious. Just small stuff. Hallway longer at night. Bathroom door appearing slightly farther away when you were sick. One Tuesday, our kitchen window showed an ocean for around 6 seconds. I figured it was stress or carbon monoxide, or maybe being alive in general. But after the cake incident, things got worse. The corners became crowded. That's the best way I can describe it. Not physically crowded. Spatially crowded. Like angles were overlapping incorrectly. Our cat refused to look above shoulder height anymore. Lena nailed the fridge shut. 3 days later, we heard singing from inside the wall behind the TV. Not ghost singing either. More like the sound of hundreds of people trying to remember the same song at different speeds. I wanted to call somebody, but every time I picked up my phone, all the apps had changed to calculators. One night, I woke up and Lena was standing in the bedroom doorway holding the missing slice of cake. Except it wasn't cake anymore. It was... Actually, never mind. It's impossible to describe without using shapes that don't exist in English. She looked exhausted. I asked where she found it. And she said, "It came back wrong." Then the ceiling fan stopped. Not spinning. Existing. The space where the fan had been became an opening into what I first assumed was the night sky, until stars began moving underneath each other like insects. Lena started crying. Not emotionally. Biologically. Tears were coming out, but her face looked completely neutral, like her body had decided independently to abandon ship. Then we heard knocking from inside the apartment. Not at the door. Inside. 3 knocks from the hallway wall. Another from beneath the floorboards. Then one directly behind me from a distance that implied the geometry of the room had folded. The lights flickered. For one frame of darkness, I saw at least 11 people standing in our bedroom. When the lights came back, they were still there, only farther away somehow. One of them said, "He consumed the anchor." And everybody started arguing at once. Not in words, in conclusions. The apartment stretched sideways. I fell backward, but the floor kept arriving in segments like delayed video buffering. My hands sank wrist deep into carpet that felt warm and wet like animal lungs. The fridge exploded open in the kitchen. Wind roared through the apartment carrying paper, dust, silverware, a chair, what I think was Thursday, and the smell of burnt sugar. Something enormous unfolded itself from the impossible distance inside the fridge. Not emerged. Unfolded. Like reality had been accidentally packed around it. Lena screamed, "Don't let it learn your name." Unfortunately, at that exact moment, every object in the apartment began loudly introducing itself. The microwave announced it was Michael. The lamp was apparently the archive of glass. The sink identified itself as a temporary mouth. And then, from somewhere very close to my ear, a voice I recognized as my own said, "His name is..." Account deleted.